Good morning. This is Daniel Posney, and this is Shifting Perspectives. And I guess the shift in perspective that I want to present this morning is a different way of looking at the world um, in a more indigenous way, in a more First Nation way. And I've got a long way to go to really get into the stream of this because I haven't been taught this way, but I'm really enjoying opening myself up to ways that feel better to my heart and start to try and practice those in my life. And one of the books that's helping me do that is called Braiding Sweetgrass. Oh, I don't know if you, oh, there we go. The green screen is going to not get it. Anyway, it's called there we go. Braiding Sweetgrass. And it's written by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And she's of the First Nations, and she's also a scientist. And so she kind of blends those two things together. And the little part of the story that I want to read to you is sort of the beginning and the end of this book, without giving away the book. And it tells the story of Skywoman and how she fell from Skyworld. And it's a story about in the Ojibwe way, how Earth was created, which they call Turtle Island. And it kind of helps me kind of just get into that presence of reciprocation and love for the earth. And just it's not something that doesn't sound like it's something that's you strive to do, just the way that you live. So this story helps me to kind of get into that, and just reading the book has been just fantastic. So I invite you just to listen to this little story without any preconceived notions, without any resistance about what your religion has taught you or what science has taught you. This is just, a lot of it is allegory and metaphor, and sometimes real story that shares just a different view, a more expanded, it's hard to explain. It's just a heart-centered way of looking at how things are created, that we're all relatives, we're all connected, kind of thing. So here we go. She fell like a maple seed, pirouetting on an autumn breeze. A column of light streamed from a hole in Skyworld, marking her path where only darkness had been before. It took her a long time to fall. In fear, or maybe hope, she clutched the bundles tightly in her hand. Hurtling downward, she only saw dark water below, but in that emptiness there were many eyes gazing up at the sudden shaft of light. They saw there a small object, a mere dust mote in the beam. As it grew closer, they could see that it was a woman, arms outstretched, long black hair billowing behind as she spiraled toward them. The geese nodded at one another and rose together from the water in a wave of goose music. She felt the beat of their wings as they flew beneath to break her fall. Far from the only home she'd ever known, she caught her breath at the warm embrace of soft feathers as they gently carried her downward. And so it began. The geese could not hold the woman above the water for much longer, so they called a council to decide what to do. Resting on their wings, she saw them all gather: loons, otters, swans, beavers, fish of all kinds. A great turtle floated in their midst and offered his back for her to rest upon. Gratefully, she stepped from the goose wings onto the dome of his shell. The others understood that she needed land for her home and discussed how they might serve her need. The deep divers among them had heard of mud at the bottom of the water and agreed to go find some. Loon dove first, but the distance was too far, and after a long while he surfaced with nothing to show for his efforts. One by one, the other animals offered to help: otter, beaver, sturgeon. But the depth, the darkness, and the pressures were too great for even the strongest of swimmers. They returned, gasping for air with their heads ringing. Some did not return at all. Soon, only little Muskrat was left, the weakest diver of all. He volunteered to go while the others looked on doubtfully. His small legs flailed as he worked his way downward, and he was gone a very long time. They waited and waited for him to return, fearing the worst for their relative, and before long, a stream of bubbles rose with the small, limp body of the muskrat. He had given his life to aid this helpless human. But then the others noticed that his paw was tightly clenched, and when they opened it, there was a small handful of mud. Turtle said, "Here, put it on my back and I will hold it." Skywoman bent and spread the mud with her hands across the shell of the turtle. Moved by the extraordinary gifts of the animal, she sang in thanksgiving and then began to dance, her feet caressing the earth. The land grew and grew as she danced her thanks, from the dab of mud on Turtle's back until the whole earth was made. Not by Skywoman alone, but from the alchemy of all the animal's gifts, coupled with her deep gratitude. Together they formed what we know today as Turtle Island, our home. Like any good guest, Skywoman had not come empty-handed. The bundle was still clutched in her hand. When she toppled from the hole in the Skyworld, she had reached out to grab onto the tree of life that grew there. In her grasp were branches, fruits and seeds of all kinds of plants. These she scattered onto the new ground and carefully tended each one until the world turned from brown to green. Sunlight streamed through the hole from the Skyworld, allowing the seeds to flourish. Wild grasses, flowers, trees, and medicines spread everywhere. And now that the animals too had plenty to eat, many came to live with her on Turtle Island. Gratitude for all the earth has given us that gratitude for all the earth has given us lends us courage to turn and face the Windigo that stalks us, to refuse to participate in an economy that destroys the beloved earth, to line the pockets of the greedy, to demand an economy that is aligned with life, not stacked against it. It's easy to write that, harder to do. I threw myself on the ground, pounding my fists and grieving the assault on my medicine woods. I don't know how to defeat the monster. I have no arsenal of weapons, no legions of fighters like those who followed Nana Bajo into battle. I am not a warrior. I was raised by strawberries, who even now are budding at my feet, amid the violets and yarrow and asters and goldenrod that are just emerging, and the blades of sweetgrass shining in the sun. In that moment, I know that I'm not alone. I lie in the meadow surrounded by the legions who do stand with me. I may not know what to do, but they do, giving of their medicine gifts as they always do to sustain the world. We are not powerless against the Windigo, they say. Remember that we already have everything we need, and so we conspire. When I get to my feet, Nana Bajo has appeared beside me with resolute eyes and a trickster grin. You have to think like the monster to defeat him, he says. Like dissolves like. He points with his eyes to a line of dense shrubs at the edge of the woods. Give him a taste of his own medicine, he says with a smirk. He walks into the gray thicket and laughter overtakes him as he disappears. I've never gathered buckthorn before. The blue-black berries stain my fingers. I've tried to stay away from it, but it follows you. It is a rampant invader of disturbed places. It takes over the forest, starving other plants of light and space. Buckthorn also poisons the soil, preventing the growth of any species but itself, creating a floristic desert. You have to acknowledge that it's a winner in the free market, a success story built on efficiency, monopoly, and the creation of scarcity. It is a botanical imperialist, stealing land from the native species. I gather all summer, sitting with each species that offers itself to the cause, listening and learning its gifts. I've always made teas for cold, salves for skin, but never this. Making medicine is not undertaken lightly. It is a sacred responsibility. The beams in my house are hung with drying plants, shelved filled with jars of roots and leaves, waiting for winter. When it comes, I walk the woods in my snowshoes, leaving an unmistakable trail toward home. A braid of sweetgrass hangs by my door. The three shining strands represent the unity of mind, body, and spirit that makes us whole. In the Windigo, the braid is unraveled. That is the disease that drives him to destruction. That braid reminds me that when we braid the hair of Mother Earth, we remember all that is given to us and our responsibility to care for those gifts in return. In this way, the gifts are sustained and all are fed. No one goes hungry. Last night, my house was full of food and friends, the laughter and light spilling out on the snow. I thought I saw him pass by the window, gazing in with hunger. But tonight I am alone and the wind is rising. I heft my cast iron kettle, the biggest pot I have, onto the stove and set the water to boil. I add to it a good handful of dry berries and then another. The berries dissolve into a syrupy liquid, blue, black, and inky. Remembering Nana Bajo's counsel, I say a prayer and empty in the rest of the jar. Into a second pot, I pour a pitcher of purest spring water, and onto its surface, I scatter a pinch of petals from one jar, bark shreds from another, all carefully chosen, each to its purpose. I add a length of root, a handful of leaves, and a spoonful of berries to the golden tea, tinged with rosy pink. I set it to simmer and sit by the fire to wait. The snow hisses against the window. The wind moans in the trees. He has come, followed my tracks home just as I knew he would. I put the sweetgrass in my pocket, take a deep breath, and open the door. I'm afraid to do this, but more afraid of what happens if I don't. He looms above me, wild red eyes blazing against the hoar frost of his face. He bares his yellow fangs and reaches for me with his bony hands. My own hands tremble as I thrust into his blood-stained fingers a cup of scalding buckthorn tea. He slurps it down at once and starts to howl for more. Devoured by the pain of emptiness, he always wants more. He pulls the whole iron kettle from me and drinks it in greedy gulps, the syrup freezing to his chin in dripping black icicles. Throwing the empty pot aside, he reaches for me again, but before his fingers can surround my neck, he turns from the door and staggers backward out into the snow. I see him doubled over, overcome with violent retching. The carrion stench of his breath mixes with the reek of shit as the buckthorn loosens his bowels. A small dose of buckthorn is a laxative, a strong dose is a purgative, and a whole kettle, an emetic. It is Windigo nature. He wanted every last drop. So now he is vomiting up coins and coal slurries, clumps of sawdust from my woods, clots of tar sand, and the little bones of birds. He spews Solvay waste, gags an entire oil slick. When he's done, his stomach continues to heave, but all that comes up is the thin liquid of loneliness. He lies spent in the snow, a stinking carcass, but still dangerous when the hunger rises to fill the new emptiness. I run back in the house for the second pot and carry it to his side, where the snow has melted around him. His eyes are glazed over, but I hear his stomach rumble, so I hold the cup to his lips. He turns his head away as if it were poison. I take a sip to reassure him, and because he is not the only one who needs it. I feel the medicine standing beside me, and then he drinks, just a sip at a time, of the golden pink tea of willow to quell the fever of want, and strawberries to mend the heart. With the nourishing broth of the three sisters, and infused with savory wild leeks, the medicines enter his bloodstream. White pine for unity, justice from the pecans, the humility of spruce roots. He drinks down the compassion of witch hazel, the respect of cedars, the blessing of silver bells, all sweetened with the maple of gratitude. You can't know reciprocity until you know the gift. He is helpless before their power. His head falls back. Leaving the cup still full, he closes his eyes. There is just one more part of the medicine. I am no longer afraid. I sit down beside him on the newly greening grass. Let me tell you a story, I say as the ice melts away. She fell like a maple seed, pirouetting from the autumn sky. Thank you for listening to that story that really strikes me, in that at the end, all the things that he devoured. This Windigo is this insatiable desire, and it's been kind of put into stories of a monster. Sometimes it has antlers on its head, and it's this powerful being, but it's never satiated. So it's always skinny and driven by this hunger. And I've talked to people that say they had that inside of them, that they had the spirit of the Windigo inside of them, and they were looking for help. And it's something that is part of our society sometimes, where this is an insatiable desire to pull from the earth and get the resources from the earth, and just driven by this never having enough. And so that, although that may be a real creature in some societies and cultures, it's definitely something that we can all relate to. And the fact that I've heard this kind of story before, where she befriended eventually the Windigo through love and through the elements of nature. And even though that this Windigo was such a powerful force, nothing is more powerful than all nature combined, and her love for that. So that was really powerful. So I hope you appreciate that, and go out and buy that book. It is just an amazing book. It is more than just a story, and it was more than kind of invited me along to completely change my perspective of the world and of living. And it's not about learning how to do ceremony or sweat lodge or so much giving thanks for things. It's really more expanded than that. And so much so that I can hardly explain it yet. And it's more like more about the way that you are doing, the way that you are living, instead of the way that you're talking. And I'm just excited about learning more from that. So hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. I love you. Bless you. Till next time.